So welcome. My name is Jennifer Donlin Wyatt. I'm the City of Sacramento's Transportation Planning Manager. My pronouns are she and her. And today, just make sure you're in the right place. We are at the Transportation Priorities Plan Phase 2 Initial Prioritization Meeting. We don't often do Saturday morning meetings, but we thought we'd give it a try to see if this worked for folks, because sometimes at Wednesday evening might not be the best choice for you. We definitely have a smaller role than we had earlier in the week, where we had, I think 120 people register and about almost 70 people showed up to the meeting. But I'm glad that we're able to work with you and talk with you on the Saturday morning. So first I want to give a shout out to the team here who are working on the Transportation Priorities Plan. We've got Katie, who is helping us with engagement and will be my second hand today and helping me with technical stuff and with Q&A. Adrian, who is with Fair and Peers, and he is an engineer and does helping us with this prioritization process. In fact, is the lead on it. We have Angela, who is helping us with community engagement and equitable processes. So thank you everybody for coming this morning. So today we're going to talk about the Transportation Priorities Plan. We affectionately call it the TPP. So we're going to talk about what the TPP is if you weren't around when we were working on it last year. Talk about what we've done last year and where we are to date, share the initial prioritization, and then share how you can share your input. So that'll be the process today. Will be about an hour. We should wrap up around 11 a.m. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk about the Mentimeter.
Wonderful. So we have 3 very quick poll questions to get to know the room. You can either go to menti.com or you can use the chat box. And so menti.com, you'll just, again, you can put it on your cell phone. You can scan the QR code on the screen, and then you'll put in the code, which is 16388902. I've also put that in the chat box. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, and again, so from here, you should be able to, again, see my screen where you get to see the poll, how to access it. And our first poll question is, which neighborhood do you live in? And so again, you can see that some people have been able to respond on Mentimeter, which is great. And again, you can also put it in the chat box. Wonderful, we've got Rory entering the room. Great. I'll leave it up just for another second or two in case anyone else wants to answer. All right. And so our second question here this morning is, what do you love about Sacramento? And again, take a moment, put it in. Trees. Yeah, we heard that a lot on Wednesday too. Someone put in the chat box, the rivers. Not having to shovel snow is something for me from Jersey who definitely appreciates. I don't miss that at all. The weather and the Amtrak, absolutely, it's always great. And then the flat terrain, walkability, all fantastic answers. And again, you feel free to use the chat box as well, where we've gotten things like older neighborhoods, cost of living, and the weather. Great. And so then for our last questioner, what are key areas for improving transportation and mobility in Sacramento? So again, take some time, think about that. We'll leave it up for a second. Again, really appreciate you all joining us. We'll have plenty of time after Jennifer's presentation this morning to have a robust question and answer session. So if you have any questions as she's going through the presentation, feel free to put them into the chat box. You will be remained muted throughout this entire presentation. The chat box will be the best way to interact with us. And just to let you know, we are recording this meeting just so we can post it on the website after for anybody who has missed. Wonderful. You have some public transit, slow cars, Broadway. Absolutely. These are all great answers. Looks like we have a pretty active chat box as well. More bike trails, building back better, I-5 and I-80, the transit system. Wonderful. Again, really love seeing some of these answers. Bike lanes protected, reducing car speeds, all really, really important answers. Wonderful. And so with that, again, really appreciate you all engaging with our polls here this morning. I'm going to turn the program back over to Jennifer, where she'll be able to share her screen and continue with the presentation.
Great, thanks, Katie, and thanks everybody for participating. We always like to see, get a feel for who's in the room and what your interests are. I think I can say for the entire team that we all really love Sacramento, and we like to learn what other folks love about Sacramento. So I'm going to jump into what is the TPP, but before that, just a little bit of background. So, in the realm of transportation that I work at for the city, we manage the infrastructure. And so that means that we take care of 1,800 miles of streets, 250 miles of bike lanes, 78 miles of shared use paths or trails, streetlights, crosswalks, traffic signals, all of that. And it costs a lot to maintain. The maintenance money comes from not the city's general fund, but from your gas taxes. Well, most of it from your gas taxes. But so I know you want us to maintain our infrastructure. We want to maintain our infrastructure. But our communities have also told us over the last 20 so years, you have projects, new things that you'd like us to do. And we've worked with you and we've done plans, whether the plan is the Folsom Boulevard Streetscape Plan, the Stockton Boulevard Corridor Plan, or some of our Vision Zero traffic safety efforts. And in fact, we've done 700 of these planned projects since the year 2000. And council has approved them. We think they cost about $5 billion in today's dollars. There's been quite a lot of inflation, particularly around transportation infrastructure costs. In the last year, 2 years, they've gone up 27% the costs. And so it's just, they cost a lot. And we don't have a lot of money. So our transportation dollars come from three sources. The first I mentioned earlier is gas tax. So we get about $9 to $12 million a year in gas taxes. And that's for repaving our streets. We often will repave our streets and also maybe put them back a little bit differently for safer infrastructure. Then there's the existing sales tax measure, which helps us for staffing, because we're not funded through the city's general funds. It helps with staffing and it helps with us to get our grants, because most grants require that we contribute a percentage. Usually it's anywhere between 20 to 50% of the overall project costs. So, and then we go for those competitive grants. Grants come out every couple of years, let's say every 2 to 3 years. This year, we're in a heavy grant season. And so we apply, they're competitive. You never know what we're going to get. It's up to the funder and the type of grant. It could be a safety grant. It could be a bike grant. It could be, a streetscape grant, although we don't have a lot of those anymore. And so with all those grants, which is the majority of our money, we have about $42 million a year. And again, it's not money in the bank because it's not money that we have. We have to go compete for it. But at this rate, we think it's going to take 100 years to build out everything that we planned. And I'm not a patient person. I think that you don't want to wait 100 years. And we don't have a way to prioritize. How do we know we're going to go after Stockton Boulevard versus Elder Creek versus Freeport or Northgate? How do we know which one should we go after first? We haven't actually done a prioritization process before. So that's what this transportation priorities plan is to reflect the prioritization for investing in transportation based on community values. And so that's what we did. Last year in the first phase, we did community outreach to say, what are your values for investing in transportation? If you remember last year, I'm sure you all do, it was just when the COVID vaccines were really rolling out. So we didn't do a lot of in-person meetings. We were still Zooming. So we had our virtual gatherings just like this. We had an online survey, we had a paper survey, and those online and paper surveys were available in Chinese, English, Hmong, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And paper surveys were available in our libraries. Our community centers weren't open at that time last year, but our libraries are always a great partner. They're not part of the city, but they are a good partner, and they were really willing to work with us. And then we attended existing meetings. And in fact, we contacted over 100 organizations to say, hey, we want to tell folks about this. Either can we get on your agenda and talk about it with your community, or can you share out the information with the folks that you communicate with? So we did a lot of that. And then we also did social media. And our social media included videos, and we worked with community members. And you may know some of these folks like Ann Stasbald or Joe Flores or Mr. Glenn Jackson or Sue Teranishi. Community folks who care about transportation, and they talked a little bit about why it's important to them. We put that out on social media. And then we heard from folks about their values. What do they care about when making decisions on how to invest in transportation? And this was the outcome. This is a lot. I know you can't read it. I'm going to do the high level. If you want to know the specifics, go to sactransportation.org. Katie, can you put that in the chat just so folks have that? And so the 5 values that we heard were improving air quality, climate, and health, providing for equitable investment, providing access to destinations, specifically parks, schools, and jobs, improving transportation safety, and that's a big thing for me. City of Sacramento continuously ranks as like the worst city in California for transportation safety. 53 people died on our streets last year. That's 53 souls that were lost, that were loved, and who loved. And then fix and maintain our transportation system. I know that you know that our streets maybe aren't the smoothest and maybe could use some repair. And you told us that when we were reaching out to you. And so those were the 5 values. And so we translated those values into criteria and metrics for having a database process to prioritize those projects. And so that was phase 1, where we identify the transportation values. And in fact, City Council adopted those in March of 2022. And then we're moving into phase 2, which is the initial prioritization, which we're going to talk to you about later this morning. And the next phase is phase 3. So we want to make sure that this is iterative, that we reflect your values. And so we're going to share with you this initial prioritization. You're going to tell us, I think it's great. I like this to change. You missed this. We'll revise, then have a draft plan. And then you'll tell us, did you heard me right? You missed this. I meant for this to happen. And we'll revise again and then have a final plan. So as part of phase 2, the initial prioritization, since council approved the criteria in March of 2022, we've done a bunch of stuff. The first thing is that we mapped over the 700 planned projects, right? That's a lot, took a lot of effort to make sure we got it right. We might not have, and so you'll let us know. That's one of our questions we'll be asking you. Then we evaluated all 700 projects against that criteria and those metrics that were just on the following page, the previous page. And now, so we got this initial prioritization. It's initial, it's a touch. Hey, what do you think? And then we developed an engagement plan. So we want to reach as many folks as possible. And so we did this in a couple of different ways, with a story page, with maps and the data behind how we prioritized. We're attending a lot of community events. Last weekend, Katie was at the Banana Festival, which was super fun. Talked to a lot of people, but a lot of different events like that. Ice cream socials. I mean, just going to places where people are going to be in real life. And then we're having these virtual workshops. So you are the second this morning of our virtual workshops that we're having. And then we have the online map comment tool, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And so some of the events, this is just an example of the events that we went to. And we're calling it the road show because we're talking about roads. We thought we were being kind of funny. And so we went to a lot, and I can tell you that the team is excited, also exhausted, but it's a good thing to go out and reach as many people as we possibly can. Community engagement we're doing through September 6th, because we want to be able to wrap it up and take it to council in October, which I'll explain more in a few slides down the road. So the initial prioritization is done. I'm going to give you an overview, and then I'm going to take you to the website to give you a little more information. But the initial prioritization includes about 360 miles of planned improvements, which is a lot. 41 miles elevated to the top as part of the higher priority. And you're saying, well, Jennifer, why 41 miles? That doesn't seem like a lot. Well, in the world of transportation, a typical complete street improvement, for example, like we're doing on Marysville, or we're working on, it's not funded, Marysville Boulevard up in North Sacramento, 1 mile costs about $20 million. And so if we talk about 41 miles, that's like over $800 million worth of work. And if I remember back to my other slide, we have maybe $42 million a year. We can't do all of that, but still it's coming up, it's rising to the top as high priority. And so 41 miles is the initial prioritization is high priority. 70% of the initial high priority projects are on our high injury network. And you're like, what's that? So there are 1,800 miles of streets in our city. 225 miles are the streets with the highest number of severe injuries and fatalities. So we call that our high injury network. Those are the streets that we have safety challenges that we need to address. So 70% of the initial high priority projects are on those streets with safety issues. Then 80% of the initial high priority projects support bicycling. 100% of them support walking. And by that, I mean, by supporting biking, it's either providing a new bikeway where there wasn't one, or improving an existing one where you might have a 5-foot tiny bike lane, and maybe the improvement's going to make it more comfortable and wider, and maybe some separation. And with walking, it could be a new crosswalk, it could be street lights, it could be putting in sidewalk where there is none, because there are great parts of Sacramento that don't have basic infrastructure. And 90% of the high priority projects actually support streets that are going to improve streets that have poor pavement, because we have some poor pavement, but also serve a lot of people. Because we have to find this balance of, well, if we have limited resources, what's the best way to do that? And so under council's direction, it's, poor quality and then serving the most people. And then last but not least, 95% of the initial high priority projects benefit communities that lack basic infrastructure. So if you've been to North Sacramento, if you've been to South Sacramento, and that's just some of the examples, there are neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, don't have curb and gutter for drainage, don't have streetlights or trees or traffic signals or crosswalks. And so these, so 95% are benefiting those communities that don't have that basic infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and go over to our website, and I'm not super slick at it, so forgive me with my awkwardness. Okay, here we go. So the first thing I want to tell you about is our story page. So the story page is the background of how we did this. We thought that maybe not everybody can attend a Zoom and they wanted to know the background. So it's the story of how the Transportation Priorities Project came to be. Basically, a lot of what I've been telling you defines what a project is, because we realize that maybe we speak in terms that not everybody understands. So we define it. We talk about the phase one and the values, and you'll see here there are links onto our website. So if you want more information, you can go there. And then what projects were prioritized. And so the projects that have been approved by council, not projects that maybe another entity did. A big question we're often asked is, well, what about transit? City of Sacramento does not operate transit. That's a separate entity. That's a separate agency. So we have projects that can improve access to transit. So for example, a sidewalk to a bus stop. But we don't operate transit. We're big champions of them. We love them. I personally love the bus and love light rail and can do anything that we can do to help them be successful is great. But again, we don't operate that. And this is really focused on city dollars. But anyway, so those were the projects that were prioritized for the city. A little bit more on that. And then we go into how the project scored. If you remember, there were 5 criteria in each of the different metrics. So the first criteria is improve air quality, climate, and health. And it gives you a little bit of background on what that is. A little picture of the Sacramento Northern Bikeway. If you haven't been there, I recommend you check it out. It's quite lovely. And then the first metric is supporting bicycling. And so if a project supports bicycling, essentially it gets points. And then you go to a map, and the lines are all planned projects. The dark orange lines are projects that will support or improve bicycling. The lighter orange ones are those that maybe not so much. And so you can zoom around and let's see, I'm going to go up here for a second. All right, here. Trying to find a project that doesn't support bicycling so much, but of course, I'm on the hook right now with you all staring at me, so I'm not going to find one. But so you can zoom in and you can see your streets. I'm just going to leave it at that. So you can see, and you're like, oh, look at this. Look at this. This is Northgate. Northgate's got a bikeway project on it, and improvements on the project that on Northgate will improve bicycling. So this is great. If that's what your interest is. Maybe your interest is supporting walking. So it describes a little bit of how that criteria and metric is. Then again, same thing, map of the city with all the planned projects, and it shows you the prioritization for projects that do or don't support walking. And so I'm going to go to, now I'm going to do a little bit better. I'm going to go over here. It looks like it's Oak Park. It looks like it's 12th Avenue, 14th Ave right through here. So there are improvements planned here, but they're light green. So they're not supporting walking so much as the project over here on Stockton Boulevard is. So I'll give you an idea of how the project were prioritized. The next one is supporting transit. So we don't have enough detail in the projects to be able to describe, yes, specifically supports transit, but if it's within a short distance of a transit stop, it will get points for supporting transit or electric vehicles. And then you get the compiled score. So projects that support air quality, climate, and health, the darker the purple, the better it meets that criteria. The lighter the purple, not so much. And so that happens for all 5 metrics or criteria. It's providing equitable investment. If you've been into North Sacramento, this is like an example of a street without sidewalks, without curb and gutter, without streetlights, yet there's a bus stop, right? And so investing in communities that lack basic infrastructure. And here's an example. So we have our data on where we have infrastructure and don't. So we mapped where that is, and the green areas here are places that don't have basic infrastructure, and we use that to help prioritize projects. We also, as part of that criteria for providing equitable investment, are benefiting communities that have been recipients of racism and bias. And specifically communities that are Black, Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, and or Indigenous. And so we use the latest census data for that. And so these areas that are in the golden are the neighborhoods or areas that are predominantly Black, Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, and or Indigenous. And then it goes through again with a compilation, the composite of darker purple, the greater it benefits equitable investment, the lighter purple, less so. So you can go through all of this. I'm not going to walk through all of it, but you can go through and look through here. Everything's at sactransportation.org. And then I wanted to show you the, hold on a second, the map with the priorities, because you're like, Jennifer, where are the priorities? Here they are. And so let me zoom in a little bit, chat box is in my way. So purple are high priority, golden or medium priority, and green are lower priority. The black lines you see here, like this one, those are projects that are funded but haven't been built yet. So for example, this one right here is the Del Rio Trail. We have a bunch of safety improvement projects on Florin Road, funded, just not implemented yet. So you can go around and you can say, oh, what are these projects? Do I have interest in them? And you can click on the line and you'll get a pop-up. And it will describe that this is the Stockton Boulevard Mobility Project. It includes some safety improvements, new traffic signals, new pedestrian crossings. You can read through that list right here. And you can do that for all the projects to say, okay, what's happening over, let's see, is this Fruit Ridge? Yeah, what's happening on Fruit Ridge? And you can have the pop-up come up. Of course, here we go. I always worry it's going to freeze because when I zoom, my computer doesn't like doing zooming and internet stuff, but we're going good. Great. So this Fruit Ridge project includes some bikeways and pedestrian improvements, and you can just get a gist of what's happening here. So what we offer is that you can provide your comment online. So you click down here, place a comment, click on that. You get this little pop-up box. I like to take the little pointer right here, and you can click on the line and hit next. Then you can tell it's a couple of different things. You expected this to be a higher priority. You expected it to be a lower priority. You're like, why is it so high? It's not benefiting anybody. But give us some detail though. The street is missing a project that was approved by the city in the city planning process. Now, I've only been with the city for 5 years. I checked in with a lot of folks that have been at the city longer, and we went through our archives, but maybe we missed something. Maybe we missed a plan that the city approved. Let me know. That's a whole, like, put a little purple wheelie thing, I don't know, let's call that icon, a purple wheelie icon on that spot and let us know about it. Or maybe it's missing a transportation need that you're saying, Jennifer, you haven't studied this, the city hasn't studied this, but there's an issue here. We need a crosswalk, turning vehicles get queued up and backed up when we need to address it, or whatever the issue is, you can select that one. Or maybe you just have a general comment. I'm going to say this is missing a transportation need, and I'm going to come down over here, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say, missing a transportation need, why the bike trail doesn't connect, because there's a gap right here. I'm also not really good at typing in front of people, so there we go. We want your email address, and we ask that because maybe we don't understand your comment, and we would like to follow up with you because we want this to be a conversation, right, where we can and say, I don't know, what do you mean the bike trail doesn't connect? Can we have a conversation about that? Then we want your zip code. You're like, why your zip code? We want to track where we're getting comments from and where we're not. And so we're actually been monitoring that, and where we're not getting community input from, we're then focusing our engagement to say, hey, neighborhood, hey, community organization, we haven't heard from you. In fact, we hadn't heard a lot from North Thomas. So we reached out to their Transportation Management Association. We reached out to their Active Transportation Commissioner. We reached out to the council office, say, hey, we're not hearing. Can you share this word out so that we can get more input? So you do that, and then you click next, and the comment gets submitted. I'm going to cancel it though, because I don't want to submit a comment because that's not a real comment for me. The other great thing is that you can see other people's comments. So you click on this, we want to hear from you. I'll zoom out for a second. And you see all these dots? These are other people's comments. And you might see somebody's comment that says, I'm not sure what this is. Let's see. I expected this to be a higher priority. This class 1 bike trail needed to increase viability to the Del Rio Trail by connecting it to Reachmouth Park. I'm not sure how to say that. you can be like, I totally agree. And you can upvote it. And then you can provide your comment. Maybe you have something to support that, as like, we use the park for, kids' activities during the summer. It's really important to be able to bike there. And then you can post that and other people can see it. I'm gonna cancel my upvote because that's not what I want to say. And so you can do that for any of the comments here. Your name, and other people can see your comment, but your name is not associated with it. So they can't see that, Katie commented that she really liked this trail and I don't like this trail, so I'm going to yell at Katie for that. So we were avoiding that type of interaction, but also being able to share and collaborate with the community, with each other. So I encourage, again, all of this is available from sactransportation.org. And all of these are available, both the story page, which is here, and the map are available in Chinese, English, Hmong, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so that we can get broad participation. So with that, that is, now that's all of that on that one. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. There we go. Did it go back to the PowerPoint? Okay, great, because it wasn't showing me the PowerPoint. Great, all right. So we have the story page. We have the comment map that I just went through, and we also have comment cards. So they're virtual comment cards where if you just want to go to our website and you're like, I don't want to work with that newfangled map, that's too much for me, I just want to submit a comment, you can do that. And then we told you, when on our roadshow, we're going to see people in person. We also have our comment cards there, so people can just write down, like, I'd like to see this. And again, all of them are available in Chinese, English, Hmong, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And so next steps are for the process is that we're doing community engagement through September 6th. So share out with your friends and neighbors and colleagues. And through October, we're going to bring it to council and say, hey, council, this is our initial prioritization. This is what we heard from the community. What is your direction? They'll give us direction. We will revise based on all of that, come back to you in February with an initial draft plan. You'll say, you heard us right, you didn't hear us right. We'll make those revisions and ideally have a final plan that we'll bring to council in April of 2023. And you might say, Jennifer, why are you doing this so quickly? Well, one, if you've heard me talk before, transportation takes forever, and I don't want this process to take forever. But also we're in an unprecedented amount of time for funding for transportation, whether it be from the state level or from the Biden infrastructure package. And we want to make sure that our priorities and what we need to go after for those dollars that are available now align with your values. So the sooner we understand what your values are for improvements, then we can align that as we seek those dollars or as extra dollars come to us. So that's why we're trying to move quickly, but I also don't want to do so quickly that we don't get your input and your comments. So there's a happy balance there. And if we have to extend it, we do, but ideally I'd like to get a feel sooner rather than later. So with that, that is my presentation. Everything is available at sactransportation.org. And I think with that, Katie, let's move over to Q&A.
Wonderful. So again, we have about a half hour left on this call here. We would love to have any questions in through the chat box. But to start it off, we had a lot of questions that came through on Wednesday night. So I might ask you a couple of those major ones that came through to maybe start the conversation.
Totally.
Is there any coordination with other sectors for things like public safety or public health?
Yes, that's a great question. So when we work in transportation, I actually have quarterly meetings with the police department. We check in, so transportation safety is key both to the public works department where I work and the police department. And so we check in quarterly, specifically on our Vision Zero efforts and our corridors that have the highest number of injuries and fatalities, so that we can ensure that our efforts are coordinated. So we do a lot of that. Public health is a little bit different. So public health is actually managed by the county, not by the city. And so there is that balance there. However, we do try to strive and be aware that our transportation choices have public health impacts. So as the city, what we do sets up a foundation for whether or not you have a choice to walk, bike, take the bus, or drive. And we want to make sure that you have that choice. And quite frankly, not everybody does. And so when you have the choice to walk or bike, you're also not only improving air quality, you're getting physical activity. And so a big part of what we try to do is ensure that you have those choices. We don't want everybody to have to take the bus or have to walk or have to bike. But if you wanted that choice, you want to actually make sure that choice is available to you. And in fact, we estimate that in order to meet our climate goals, and I see some folks here from Ecos on the line, to meet our climate goals, we'll still have people driving, and they'll probably, hopefully all be driving electric cars, but we still want to see fewer people driving. And to have that choice, we just need an improved system.
Great. All right, Kay asked a really great question. She may have missed it, but does this map include all current plans, such as the master pedestrian plan, the bike plan from 2016, and the Vision Zero from 2019?
Ooh, somebody knows our plans. I love it. Absolutely. So this does include our bicycle master plan. The pedestrian master plan is a little bit odd because it doesn't have infrastructure projects so much as areas for improvement, but it does include that. And it definitely does include the Vision Zero planning work, which includes the Vision Zero action plan and the Vision Zero top 5 corridor study. And in fact, as part of the safety criteria, we give maximum points to any project that is on the top 10 corridors, not just the top 5, but the top 10. Then it also includes we did a school safety evaluation at 20 schools in the city that had the highest number of nearby crashes and severe injuries. So we did that. We finished that in 2019, 2020. And those are also prioritized through this effort. And if you didn't see the big press conference earlier this week, Congresswoman Matsui got us about $2.2 million to start on that work around schools. And so we'll be kicking that off soon, which I'm very excited for. I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Great question. So let's talk about funding for a second. Is there any consideration for projects that don't cost very much, but might make a difference in some poorly serviced neighborhoods? And then if you could talk about how these projects are funded, if there's any federal funding.
Ooh, that's a lot of questions. Okay, so first I'll talk about smaller projects. We are always looking for opportunities to do the small spot improvements. There are 2 ways we do that. The first is through our traffic investigators team. So if you have ever used 301 for traffic issues, that's who it goes to. And they have some funding to address those immediate and smaller needs. And then there are ones that are a little bit bigger that we work to address. I don't know how many people on the call are familiar with the Oak Park neighborhood. A couple of years ago, we noticed a high number of crashes between Broadway, 34th, and 2nd Avenue. It's a weird triangle area. And we also had been working on the Envision Broadway corridor plan. So we sought funding and received from SACOG, which is our regional government, I'm just gonna say for terms of simplicity, a mini grant to do a pilot. And we tested for about 4 days what it would be like to close 2nd Avenue to cars, but keep it open for people walking and biking. And we were out there all those 4 days asking people what they thought. We set up a camera, we did observations to see for drivers, what were they doing, or people walking and biking doing. And we got feedback and it was very successful. Folks liked it. And so we implemented a quick build with delineators on flexible posts. So if you've been there recently, you might have seen them. They're orange, they're very bright. They might not be the prettiest thing ever, but they're a good safety improvement. So we're doing these quick builds. And then we went to go seek more money to make it permanent and we got the money. And so that goes into Katie's question of like transportation funding. So nothing is fast in transportation. I'll tell you, it drives me crazy. I'm a high caffeinated person and I like to be responsive to our communities move quickly, but that's not how the world of funding works. So we've gotten the money, but we haven't gotten the money yet. And so we'll be making that more permanent and more attractive and working with the neighborhood association and the business improvement district to help support that and really make it owned by the community rather than just a place of transportation infrastructure. So really excited about that. So transportation funding, really quickly go over that. We get transportation funding mostly through grants. So I already went over the gas tax and I already went over the Measure A sales tax, and then the majority of which comes from grants. Grants come from essentially, I'm going to say 3 sources. The first is SACOG, which is the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. They essentially manage all the federal funding that is sent to our region, and then they set up a competitive grant program that we compete for. So we go after that all the time. And in fact, we're getting ready. They're going to have their grant program in the fall. Very excited. Then there is the state programs. The state programs, predominantly the active transportation program that's managed by the state, and then like bridge programs. are often managed by the state and then or made available by the state. And we go after those. And in fact, if you know about the I Street Bridge, which could improve connections to West Sacramento, that is funded through the state's bridge program. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the federal bridge program as well, because it's expensive. And then there are the federal programs. And so, in fact, so as I mentioned earlier, unprecedented time for federal dollars. And so with the Biden infrastructure package, we've got a lot of money for transportation. And we're going after everything that we're ready for. And that we went after the bridge program, which is the new one, new infusion of funding, and the brand new one, which is called the Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is out right now. The grant application is due on the 15th of September. And we are working diligently to get that grant application in for Marysville Boulevard. So this is a safety program specifically focused on safety with a focus on equity. So we happen to be ahead of the curve in the region. So we have a Vision Zero action plan. Nobody else does. And then we also have our top 5 corridor study. And so we looked at what are the streets with the highest number of severe injuries and fatalities, the top 5: Marysville, El Camino, Broadway, Stockton, Lower Stockton, and Florin. Florin's already funded. Broadway, Stockton is already funded. Stockton is not quite ready, but we're going to go after a different, more complex design. So we have to go after design funding first. El Camino, again, more complex design. But the Safe Streets for All is construction money. We can do design and construction. So Marysville is the perfect project for that. $20 million. And so we're getting ready for that. And so we're really excited for that. It's really going to help our communities, this new federal dollars. But we do go after any penny that's out there available to us.
Wonderful. Well, Ralph and Kay asked 2 great questions in the chat box. The first is about the Franklin Road project between Broadway and Sutterville. Right now it's in purple. However, to add the bike lanes, it's going to require removing parking on one side of the street, but both of them have businesses. How do you resolve that?
We're going to have conversations. That's a hard one. And so was that Ralph asking that question?
That was Ralph.
Okay. So we're going to have to resolve that. And so what we'll do is, it does have planned bike lanes on it. Absolutely right. It's not a very wide road. So in order to accommodate bike lanes, we either don't let people to drive north or south, or parking is removed. And so what we'll do is we'll have a design conversation with the city and talk about with the community and talk about the pros and cons of each and see what consensus we can reach to make that happen. And so I don't know what that would be. And so that would probably be, if you haven't been following all of our projects, we're working on the Franklin Boulevard Complete Streets project, which is south of Sutterville. And so it's mostly funded, not fully, but mostly. So we're going to be going into construction for that. The logical next step would be then to move it north of Sutterville. And so then we'll start having those design conversations. If you know Megan Johnson, she's one of our rock star engineers of the city, and that's been her project for a number of years. My guess is that that section will probably be hers as well. She's really great at working with communities to find a path forward.
Wonderful. And then Kay asked a question that came up on Wednesday night as well. How is SAC-RT looped in with these plans? And have there been conversations about the bus-only streets or bus-only lanes and streets? And if so, what's the criteria for those?
Great question. So RT is aware of our process, but this planning process is not about how those projects are designed or defined. It's more about once they are designed and defined, how do we prioritize them? So that's a little bit different on the different ends. However, big fan of transit, right? And so I'm a big fan of bus lanes, and we don't really have them. But if you followed earlier in February of this year, if you go to sactransportation.org, go to transportation planning, you'll see that we have our climate and transportation effort that we did this winter, where City Council asked us if we were to really invest in transportation for thinking about climate, what would we do? And one of the big projects the staff proposed was a bus only lane on Stockton Boulevard, all the way from Alhambra to 47th, the city's entire jurisdiction. And I'm gonna say that's a big thing for us at the city, because normally we were like, oh, we'll be nervous about the impact to drivers and congestion. And for this, we said, go big or go home. You know, climate change is real, things are happening. We need to move quickly on this, and we know that there are a couple of ways to quickly change people's have a big impact on transportation and climate, and that's transit. And so how can we support transit? Because we don't operate the bus, but we operate the infrastructure they travel on. And if we can create an infrastructure environment that you get on the bus at your intersection and you know at 1 o'clock, and you know for sure that you're going to be at your destination at 1:30, That makes it a more reliable type of transportation that you're more likely to take. And so with a bus lane, you can do that. And so we're excited for that. It's going to be our first big effort on it, but it shouldn't be our last, and it won't be our last. And we'll have regular conversations with RT on that.
Wonderful. All right, we're getting to our last few questions. Jennifer, do you have the crowdsourced map still pulled up on your computer?
I do, yeah. Want me to share screen?
Right. Yeah, John is asking if you can go back and explain the symbols on it again.
Sure.
Great.
All right, all right.
Yeah, we want to make sure everyone understands this process and what things kind of stand for in this.
I wonder if I can zoom in so folks can see us a little better. All right, maybe that helps. Is it bigger for everybody? Oh, bigger for everybody. You can see. So the purple arrow up means that they expected it to be a higher priority. And purple because that's high priority, right? Like that's color that we chose for higher priority. A green arrow down means that I expected this to be a lower priority because our lower priority projects are green. The purple circle wheelie thing means that it's missing a project that the city worked with the community on and it just isn't showing up on the map. We tried to get everything, but maybe we didn't. The golden cross is missing a transportation need. So that means we haven't done planning efforts there, but we need the city to come look at it because there's an issue or a problem that needs to be solved. And then the brown cog is just a general comment. Anything that you want to say there. The black line means it's a project that's funded, but we haven't broken ground. So construction hasn't started yet. Brown ones are regionally significant. So those are projects that are going to be incredibly expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars, but are not important only for Sacramento, but for the region. So, and that's things like interchange projects. So where is, here we go, El Camino, right? So it's a big interchange project. It's going to help with operations and travel around here. Or, oh, what my favorites, woohoo, Truxel Bridge. So we're allowed to be biased in our own personal ways. I just don't have my bias influence the process. Truxel Bridge is a new bridge that would connect downtown to South Thomas. Ultimately, it's planned to have facilities for walking, biking, and transit. So if everybody's heard of, green line to the airport or light rail to the airport, this is where it would have come across. And serve the South and Thomas and ultimately the transatlantic all the way up Truxel and serve South and North of Thomas. There's no bridge there. And that's a regionally serving project. It serves benefit to everybody. So it's included there. So those were those brown lines mean. And then we already went over the colors for high priority, medium priority, and lower priority. And then of course, these are the city limits. Did I answer the question?
It does. It looks like John's map right now might not have a legend box, which is
okay.
And what Adrian kind of commented on in the chat a few minutes ago, that sometimes using a different browser is helpful for these maps. Again, they take a lot of bandwidth, and depending on what computer you're using or what software you're using, if you do have an option for a different browser. But I also did put my email in the chat. I'm going to do it again. So again, anyone can reach out to us. And we're happy to connect you to the project team and or help you ourselves if we can.
And the legend is up at the top here. There is the 3 lines. And so if you click on and off the 3 lines, the legend will open and close.
Wonderful. All right, it looks like Kay has one of our last questions in here. And again, we still have some time. So if you still have any questions, feel free to put them in. But Kay was at the city council meeting or saw the city council meeting. And one of the things that was brought up was implementing leading pedestrian crossing signals at crosswalks. Do you know if or when this is going to be adopted?
I don't know. That was discussed at city council. So the city implements our traffic signal folks work to implement leading pedestrian intervals. And for folks that don't know what an LPI is, that's what we call them because we like to create acronyms for everything. LPIs are where you're at an intersection with a traffic signal and the pedestrians get the green, well, the pedestrian walk signal ahead of the green for drivers. The benefit for that is that pedestrians are more visible. And the data shows that it improves safety for people who are walking across the street because turning drivers then are more visible. They see the pedestrians and don't hit them. So we like them. They're great. We've got a number in the city. So I'm not sure the process to implement. I know we are open to implementing more, but I'm not sure on the exact council item that they're talking about. I do know that there is state legislation looking at, they initially were looking at requiring lead pedestrian intervals on all signalized intersections. That's been rolled out back a little bit. Then the latest I heard was that it's only going to be applied to state-owned facilities. That means state highways, and state highways aren't just elevated I-5 going through downtown, but they're also main streets in places like Marysville, not Marysville Boulevard, but the city of Marysville, which is north of Sacramento. So that's the latest I heard. But if you want to provide your contact information, you have a specific question, I can put you in touch with our signal folks.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that looks like it's the end of our question and answer session. So again, we'll keep this open for the next couple of minutes in case anyone has any extra questions. But like I had mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, we are recording this meeting so that we can put it on our website for anyone who has missed it. We're also going to be producing 2 meeting summaries, again, one from the one on Wednesday night and one from the one here. So you'll be able to, again, any of your neighbors or friends who are still interested in this process, please remind them that the comment section is open until September 6th. To please visit sactransportation.org, and I'll let Jennifer close us out here.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and thanks everybody. I'm a transportation nerd, and I know you might not be thinking about it in the same way, but it's important to you in supporting your life and your family and your friends and your, getting to school, getting to work. And so I really appreciate you spending a Saturday morning with us. I'm going to be very thankful if you provide us our comments. I do want to make sure that the work that we do reflects your values and your needs. So thank you. And also share with your friends, because the more input we get, the better outcome we'll have. And we'll make sure that we invest based on our community. So thank you so much. Don't forget September 6th is the deadline for comments. And if you have any other thoughts or ideas, it looks like you can either submit a comment on our website or Katie put her email address in there. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care.